They say they love, but in truth they love only the golden reflection of their own miseries. The modern man does not desire the real woman. He desires the piece amputated from his own soul that he never had the courage to integrate. He looks at her and sees what is missing within himself: gentleness, intuition, delicacy, meaning. Thus is born what Jung called the anima, the ghost of the inner feminine projected onto another's body. It is not her who is loved. It is the image he created of himself, a narcissistic mirage where his lap dances dressed as a woman. Here lies the root of so many insane passions. It is not a desire for the other, but a desire for himself, disguised as love. If you cannot bear this truth, if you still need the sweet lies that culture has sold you about love, feel free to leave now. This video is not solace for the fragile, but if you can handle the blade that cuts through illusions, like this video and stay with me. Because here, we unmask the emotional theater of the love-struck man. He does not love what he sees. He hypnotizes himself with what he projects. The woman becomes stage, canvas, display window, where he pours everything he never dared to build within himself. Thus, she is turned into a priestess of an invisible cult, being worshipped not for her essence, but for her symbolic utility. And then, inevitably, the tragedy begins, because no real woman can bear the weight of that foreign fantasy forever. One day, she acts outside the invisible script imposed upon her. She shows imperfections, her own desires, boundaries, and the enchantment shatters. The man feels betrayed, but not by her, rather by his own crumbling illusion. He does not lose the woman. He loses the mirror in which he saw what he wished to be. It is in that collapse that many sink into hatred, resentment, or despair. The myth has fallen, and the abyss of their own incompleteness reappears before their weakened eyes. Worse still is the burden that falls upon the woman. She often does not even understand the symbolic role in which she has been placed. She was not loved as a subject, but used as a projection screen, and she feels the invisible weight of needing to match an ideal she never promised to uphold. "Be my salvation," demands the male unconscious. "Fill what I cannot construct alone." And when she fails, as failure is inevitable, she becomes guilty for not sustaining the delusion. A veiled accusation arises. "You've changed." No, she was never. What he saw, he is the one who never truly looked. This is where the psychic desert of crisis is born. What was once romantic ecstasy now turns into violent frustration. Many men try to rebuild the projection. They beg, they demand, they manipulate, they force their partner to return to that initial fantasy. Others flee, seeking a new woman on whom to pour the same narcissistic theater, thus beginning the sick cycle all over again. Few, very few, have the courage to face the true enemy, themselves, to look upon their internal void without seeking to fill it with another's body. This courage, my friends, is the beginning of true individuation. Jung did not see this pain as failure, but as a portal. When the myth collapses, the chance for metamorphosis is born. Now the man, naked before his own abyss, can finally begin the only work that truly matters, integrating what he once projected, to discover within himself the intuition he sought in the woman, to reconnect with his own vulnerability, sensitivity, and affective dimension, no longer outsourcing his soul to the opposite sex. This is the principle of what Jung called individuation, the unification of opposites within oneself, the reconciliation between the dry masculine and the denied feminine. A laborious, brutal work, but liberating. Here begins the true crossing. The man who dares to traverse this desert no longer seeks in women what he lacks. He builds within himself the wholeness he always delegated. He learns to feel without drowning, to intuit without losing strength, to be vulnerable without being weak. The once projected inner feminine is now integrated, and with that arises a freedom that emotional slaves will never know. The freedom of no longer needing to use another as a psychic crutch. He no longer demands that someone save him, because he has already rescued himself from within. And look, in that moment, the woman is finally freed. She ceases to be a prisoner of the unreal ideal imposed upon her. She can then be herself, imperfect, contradictory, human, and still be loved, no longer for matching an expectation, but for being recognized as an autonomous subject. What emerges then is conscious love, love that does not demand perfection, but shares imperfection with respect and integrity. An encounter of two wholes who walk side by side, without the illusion that one exists to complete the other's void. It is on this rare level of maturity that love, for the first time, ceases to be consumption and becomes creation. Most people never reach this point. They remain trapped in the childish logic of "you complete me," which is nothing but a masked confession of inner poverty. When the man integrates the feminine within himself, love ceases to be necessity and becomes choice. He does not love because he lacks. He loves because he overflows. His relationship no longer arises from hunger, but from abundance. And only when two abundant beings meet does love no longer imprison, no longer demand, no longer manipulate. It simply is. Here dies the modern myth of the saving muse, of the idealized partner as a board of emotional salvation. The mature man no longer seeks psychic nurses, maternal priestesses, or redemptive princesses. The woman ceases to be the remedy for his void and becomes the companion of the journey. There is no longer a need for perfect fit or symbiotic fusion. There is, however, mutual respect between two souls walking side by side, each preserving intact individuality. Neither needs to draw from the other what he did not find in himself. They are together not because they need each other, but because they choose to be. It is the end of dependence and the beginning of true loving freedom. But this path demands something that few can endure, the direct confrontation with one's own abyss, because abandoning the projection is to abandon the fantasy that anesthetized the pain of incompleteness. It is to accept that what he sought outside, consolation, shelter meaning, will never be found in any external body. Many prefer to spin forever on the carousel of substitutions. They change women, they change ideals, but they keep intact the narcissistic illusion that the next love will finally fill the existential hole they carry. The mature man, however, ends this flight. He faces his own void as a battlefield where he either builds his inner fortress or dies in emotional servitude, and that is why so few reach true masculine maturity. Modern culture does not prepare men for this crossing. It teaches them to seek, never to integrate, to consume, never to build, to idealize, never to see the real. Adult love is a handcrafted work, an alchemical labor of integrating internal opposites before offering oneself to another. There are no easy prizes on this path. There are no cheers, only silence, solitude, and confrontation. But at the end of this crossing, the man ceases to be a fragment. He emerges whole, and only the whole is worthy of loving without imprisoning, without consuming, without devouring the other with his need disguised as passion. It is at this point that the man becomes, finally, a living paradox, strong and vulnerable, rational and intuitive, present and free. He no longer fears abandonment because he did not delegate to another the role of sustaining him. He no longer despairs at not being chosen because he chose himself first. The woman, in his presence, does not find a meek soul to be nurtured, but a sovereign to be respected. And this sovereignty is not harsh, it is serene. It is the kind of power that needs no display because it emanates. He does not control the other. He governs himself, and for that reason, paradoxically, he becomes magnetic. At this level, love ceases to be anxious symbiosis and becomes a meeting of architects, two beings who have already built their own internal kingdoms and now share bridges without destroying walls. There is no longer the pathetic game of seeking approval, emotional tests, or effective blackmail. There exists only parallel walking where each maintains his verticality. The drama of infantile relationships dies here. What emerges then is a love that does not suffocate, but inspires. A love that does not demand sacrifices of identity, but invites mutual flourishing, without shackles, without illusions, without dependencies disguised as romance. But see how modern society fears this kind of love. Mass culture prefers the drama of neediness because it feeds the emotional market. Books, songs, films, all glorify dependence disguised as passion, despair masked as romance. To love has become to suffer, to beg, to implore for reciprocation. An emotional pornography that sustains legions of weak men seeking the great love that will complete them. It is convenient to keep the majority infantilized, forever hunting for saviors, male or female. After all, whole men do not consume desperately. They do not serve the herd well. They are dangerous because they are free. That is why true masculine maturity is not marketable. It does not generate profits for pillow therapists, nor clicks for emotional gurus, because it demands the most brutal of tasks, dying to one's own narcissistic ego, abandoning the pleasure of victimization, letting go of the sweet lie that another's love can heal him. This path will not be applauded by friends, nor understood by the majority. The whole man, who has integrated his anima and no longer projects, often walks in silence, but walks with his chest held high. He no longer fears losing anyone because he has not lost himself. And now, finally, the woman ceases to be the altar where the man sacrifices his identity. She is no longer a goddess nor a therapist, but a companion. No longer an object of idealization, but a subject of respect. The real woman does not want a man who idolizes her. She wants a man who exists fully before her. When the man no longer projects, the woman breathes. She can be who she is, without the invisible weight of having to represent the unattainable perfection created in another's mind. And in that space emerges the only love worthy, the love that sees without distorting. This mature love does not blossom around lacks, but around strengths. It is a pact between two individuals already walking whole. There is no demand for completeness, because both already overflow. It is the difference between two hungry men fighting over the same piece of bread and two kings sharing their own feasts. When love is no longer salvation, it can finally be freedom. There is no hysterical clinging nor fear of absence. There is trust, there is space, there is growth. This is the only love capable of surviving time, the one that does not rest on illusion, but on the abundance of two who suffice to themselves. But the path to here is arduous, and that is why so few travel it. It is easier to live in projections, in infantile passions, in the sweet illusions sold in true love packages. It is more comfortable to search for muses than to confront one's own shadow. The majority of men prefer to plunge into the repetitive cycle of idealization, disappointment, and resentment, rather than face the mirror and see there the true enemy, their inability to integrate what they seek outside. Immature love is always circular. It revolves around the absence of self. When at last the projection dies, the man is reborn, no longer as one who seeks to be completed, but as one who has already completed his inner task. It is at this point that the woman ceases to be the center and becomes the encounter, an encounter of freedoms. Now, there is no more drama, no emotional blackmail, no theater of affective games. There is clarity. There are two beings who choose to remain together without the neurotic obligation of possession, and precisely because they are freer, they are stronger. The less they need, the deeper they go. What the world calls love, I call the commerce of lacks. Affections are traded for security, sex for validation, presence for emotional anesthesia. But this market love always charges interest, fear, jealousy, insecurity, dependence. It is a dirty game, sustained by empty souls begging to be filled. The man who transcends this mire discovers something terrible and liberating. True love is not for patching holes, but for expanding existences. It is construction, not patchwork. It is risk, not guarantee. That is why few endure. Because there are no safety nets. And while the fragile devour themselves in the public squares of neediness, the whole man walks in the silence of those who do not need to be saved. His presence does not demand, does not beg for space in anyone's life. He is complete. And it is precisely because he does not need that he becomes desirable. The woman senses this, even without fully understanding. She perceives the difference between one who begs for love and one who offers presence. And in the face of that presence, respect is born, desire is nourished, the bond matures. True love does not ask, it simply is. But there is one last step that the man must overcome, understanding that love is not the final destination, but the beginning of the true inner alchemy. Each relationship will always be a polished mirror, reflecting what has yet to be integrated. exposing the shadows that insist on surviving. There is no end to this process. There is continual refinement. Mature love does not protect from suffering. It transforms suffering into raw material for growth. Each crisis, each conflict, each disillusionment is a brutal summons to the next level of self-knowledge. Only the weak flee from this invitation. The strong dive in, and in diving they discover the final secret. Love is not a place to arrive, but a field to work. There is no happily ever after. There is building while we breathe. When the man abandons the illusion of the projected anima, he does not stop loving. He begins to love for the first time, not as a dependent but as a sovereign, not as a lost child but as a conscious creator. Now love does not bind, it expands. It does not drain, it adds. It does not consume, it ennobles. And I tell you, this is the love that most will never taste, because it demands a previous death, the death of the ego hungry for completeness, the death of the infantilized soul that begs to be loved in order to avoid facing its own void. It is a brutal rebirth, an internal birth. Whoever passes through it never returns to the market of the desperate. He walks among men as one who has seen the bottom of the abyss and returned carrying his own soul in his arms. And because he no longer needs love, he becomes finally able to love, no longer as a servant but as master of himself. Now, if you have withstood this hammer until here, if you did not flee like the fragile, like this video, and subscribe to this channel, here I do not offer consolation, I offer the crown. The love I have described is not found in store windows, nor in soap operas, nor in catchy phrases. It is reserved for the few who dare to strip away their illusions and cross the fire of individuation. And if you, like me, already sense that force emerging in your own chest, know this: the work has only just begun. For to love, truly, is the supreme art of those who have already conquered the interior empire. And now, the rest of the world no longer matters.